The Winchester rifle trembled in Cordelia Whitmore's grip as the towering Comanche warrior dropped to one knee before her, his bronze hands pressed against the dusty earth of her cattle ranch. Blood seeped through the torn buckskin of his shoulder, staining the ground beneath him crimson. "Please, white woman," he gasped, his English heavily accented but clear. "I beg you, let me work your land. I will give you everything. Even another child to replace the one the fever took." Cordelia's breath caught. 3 months had passed since little Margaret's death, and the wound still felt fresh as a branding iron. The audacity of this savage's words should have sent her into a fury, yet something in his desperate dark eyes held her finger frozen on the trigger. Behind her, the ranch hands muttered uneasily. "Mrs. Whitmore, just give the word," called out Jasper, her foreman. "We'll string him up proper." But Cordelia found herself studying the warrior's face. Deep lines of exhaustion carved his weathered features, and she noticed now how his powerful frame shook not from fear, but from hunger and blood loss. His long black hair was matted with sweat and dirt, his magnificent war paint smeared and faded. "You're Taleka," she said suddenly, recognizing him from the wanted posters. "The one they call Stormwalker. You've been raiding settlements for 3 moons. He lifted his head, meeting her gaze with surprising dignity despite his prostrate position. "My people are dead. Soldiers came to our winter camp. Women, children all killed like dogs." His voice cracked. "I have nothing left but these hands, this body. I offer them to you, and in return, food, shelter, protection from those who hunt me." His eyes flickered toward her belly, then back to her face. "And if the Great Spirit wills it, I will plant new life in your womb. Your husband's blood runs in this soil. My seed could grow strong here, too." Cordelia's late husband Morrison had been dead 2 years, taken by a Comanche raid, ironically enough. The ranch sprawled across 10,000 acres, but she'd been struggling to keep it running with her dwindling crew. Half her cattle had been rustled, her fences were failing, and the banknote would come due before winter. "You killed my husband's kind," she whispered. "As your kind killed mine," Taleka replied. "But I am done with war. I want only to live, to serve, to ... He struggled for words. To matter to someone again. The honesty in his voice cut through her defenses like a blade. Here was a man who had lost everything, just as she had. A dangerous man. Yes, but perhaps the very danger she needed. "Mrs. Whitmore," Jasper warned, "don't be fooled by his pretty words. He's killed dozens of our people." Cordelia lowered the rifle slightly. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and she could see the warrior swaying where he knelt. Soon he would collapse from his wounds whether she shot him or not. "Why me?" she asked. "Why my ranch?" "Because you understand loss," Taleka said. "Simply, I watched you bury your child. Saw you weep over that small grave. You know the taste of grief, it matches mine." Cordelia's hand shook as she set the rifle against the porch railing. The decision formed in her mind like storm clouds gathering sudden, inevitable, and dangerous. "Jasper, take the men back to the north pasture," she commanded. "Check the fence lines." "Ma'am, you can't be serious about. That's an order." Her voice carried the authority Morrison had taught her to wield. "Go, now." The foreman's weathered face creased with worry, but he tipped his hat. "Come on, boys. Let's give the lady some thinking room." As they mounted up, he called back, "We'll be within shouting distance, Mrs. Whitmore." Alone with the wounded warrior, Cordelia descended the porch steps slowly. Taleka remained motionless, his breathing labored. Up close, she could see the intricate scars that decorated his chest, marks of battles won and losses endured. "You're bleeding out," she observed. "Yes. If I help you, my neighbors will burn me out. The sheriff will arrest me. I'll lose everything Morrison built." "Yes, he agreed again, then added quietly, "But you have already lost what matters most." The truth of his words hit like a physical blow. Margaret's empty room, the silence that filled the house like smoke, the nights when grief made her consider taking Morrison's old pistol to her temple. What did she really have left to lose? "What's your real name?" she asked. He lifted his head, surprised. "My mother called me Ayanna." "It means eternal blossom." "Ayanna," she repeated, the name strange on her tongue. "Can you stand?" With visible effort, he rose to his feet, towering over her by more than a foot. His massive frame would intimidate most men, but Cordelia had faced down stampeding cattle and prairie storms. She'd learned to stare danger in the eye. "If I take you in," she said slowly, "there will be conditions. You work from dawn to dusk. No weapons. You sleep in the barn. And if you ever threaten me or mine, I'll gut shoot you and leave you for the vultures." Something flickered in his dark eyes. Hope, perhaps. "I accept." "One more thing." She stepped closer, close enough to smell the wood smoke and leather scent of his skin. "About what you said." "About giving me a child." His jaw tensed. "I spoke from desperation. If the words offended, they didn't." The admission cost her, but she forced it out. "Morrison and I tried for 10 years before Margaret came. The doctor said my womb was ... difficult. If such a thing were possible between us, I would welcome it." Ayanna studied her face with an intensity that made her flush. "You would take a half-breed child to your breast?" "I would take any child to my breast," she whispered fiercely. "Any child that was mine." For a long moment they stood in the dusty yard, two broken souls recognizing something in each other that neither expected to find. Then Ayanna swayed, his knees buckling. Cordelia caught his arm, her small hands barely spanning his massive bicep. "Come on, let's get you patched up before you bleed to death on my property." The paperwork alone would be a nightmare. Despite his pain, Ayanna's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "You are not what I expected, white woman." "Cordelia," she corrected, guiding him toward the house. "My name is Cordelia." "And you're—" "About to learn that I'm full of surprises." Part 3. Forbidden ceiling, the kitchen lamp cast dancing shadows across Ayanna's bronzed back as Cordelia worked to clean his wounds. His breath hissed between clenched teeth when she dabbed carbolic acid into the deepest gash, but he remained perfectly still. "Bullet went clean through," she murmured, threading a needle with steady hands. "You're lucky it missed the bone." "Luck had nothing to do with it," he replied, his voice strained. "The spirits protected me to bring me here." Cordelia paused in her stitching. "You believe that?" "I believe the Great Spirit weaves all paths together. Your husband's death, your child's passing, my people's massacre, all threads in a pattern we cannot see." He turned his head to look at her. "Perhaps we are meant to heal each other's wounds." The intimacy of the moment struck her suddenly. This dangerous man half naked in her kitchen, trusting her with his life while she touched his skin with careful fingers. Morrison had been dead 2 years, but she'd forgotten how it felt to tend to a man's body, to feel needed in such a primal way. "Hold still," she whispered, beginning the delicate work of closing the wound. Each stitch pulled his flesh together, and she found herself fascinated by the play of muscles beneath his copper skin. "You have gentle hands," Ayanna said softly. "Like my mother did. Tell me about her." His eyes grew distant. "She was daughter of a chief, but she chose my father, a warrior with no status, no horses. The tribe said she married beneath her station." A bitter laugh escaped him. "They were buried in the same unmarked grave when the soldiers came." Cordelia's hand stilled. "How many did you lose?" "Everyone, 73 souls." His voice broke. "Children who called me uncle. Elders who taught me the old ways. Warriors who rode beside me." He was quiet for a long moment. I could not even gather their bodies for proper burial." Without thinking, Cordelia placed her palm against his cheek. The gesture surprised them both, but neither pulled away. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "As I am sorry for your losses," he replied, covering her hand with his much larger one. "Your husband, how did he die?" The question she dreaded. "Comanche raid, 3 winters past. They burned our neighbor's place, killed the Hendersons. Morrison rode out with the posse." She swallowed hard. "They found him 2 days later. It wasn't quick." Ayana's face darkened with shame. "Perhaps it was my own war party. I led many raids in those days. Perhaps." She resumed her stitching, each pull of thread binding them together in strange ways. "Does it matter now? You should hate me. I should." She knotted the final stitch and reached for clean bandages. "But hate is a luxury I can't afford. This ranch is dying, and I need help that won't cost me wages I don't have. You would trust me with your cattle, your land?" Cordelia began wrapping the bandage around his shoulder, her fingers brushing his skin with each pass. "Trust is earned, Ayana, but you're right about one thing: we both understand loss. Maybe that's enough to start with." As she worked, she became aware of his breathing changing, growing deeper. When she glanced up, she found him watching her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Cordelia," he said, testing her name. "It means heart in your language, yes?" "Close enough." She secured the bandage with shaking fingers. "There, that should hold." But neither moved to break the closeness between them. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm. Cordelia could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the pulse beating at the base of his throat. "I should prepare the barn for you," she said breathlessly. "Yes," he agreed, but his gaze dropped to her lips. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and danger. Then a dog barked in the distance, breaking the spell. Cordelia stepped back quickly, her cheeks burning. "I'll find you some clothes. Morrison's things should fit." Dawn came with the sound of splitting wood echoing across the ranch yard. Cordelia peered through her bedroom curtains to see Ayana's massive frame silhouetted against the rising sun, Morrison's old work shirt straining across his broad shoulders as he swung the axe with methodical precision. 3 weeks had passed since she'd taken him in, and the change in her property was remarkable. Fence lines that had sagged for months now stood straight and true. The barn roof no longer leaked. Her vegetable garden, long neglected, had been cleared and replanted with vegetables she'd never heard of, but that grew with startling vigor. Most surprising of all, her cattle, spooked and scattered for so long, had begun gathering closer to the house. Ayana possessed an almost supernatural ability with animals. She'd watched him gentle her most aggressive bull with nothing but patience and low words in his native tongue. "Morning, Mrs. Whitmore." Jasper's voice from the kitchen doorway made her jump. The foreman stood hat in hand, his expression troubled. "Jasper, you're early. Needed to speak with you private-like." He glanced toward the window where Ayana continued his work. "It's about your hired man." Cordelia's stomach tightened. "What about him? Folks in town are talking. Sheriff Dalton's been asking questions. Word is there's a bounty on that Comanche's head, $500, dead or alive." The coffee cup slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. $500. More money than she'd see in 2 years of ranching. "Mrs. Whitmore, I know he's been useful around here, but nothing." She knelt to gather the broken pieces, her mind racing. "He's under my protection." "Ma'am, with respect, you can't protect him from the whole territory. And if folks find out you're harboring a wanted man, double quotes." Jasper shook his head gravely. "They'll string you up alongside him." Through the window, she watched Ayana pause in his work, wiping sweat from his brow. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, offering her a small smile that did strange things to her heartbeat. "I'll handle it," she said firmly, after Jasper left. Cordelia walked out to where Ayanna was stacking firewood with military precision. The morning air carried the scent of prairie grass and his honest sweat. "We need to talk," she said. He straightened, reading the tension in her voice. "The bounty? Hunters have found my trail. It wasn't a question." "How did you—" "I've been expecting them. A Comanche cannot hide among white men forever, no matter how well he splits wood." He set down the axe. "I will leave today. You have already risked too much." "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "I mean, there must be another way." Ayanna stepped closer, his dark eyes searching her face. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, she'd begun looking forward to his presence at her dinner table. Because his quiet stories of Comanche life had filled the terrible silence in her house. Because when she woke screaming from nightmares about Margaret, she'd find him standing guard on her porch like a protective spirit. Because she was falling in love with him, though she'd rather die than admit it. "You're valuable to the ranch," she said instead. "I am more than just hands for hire, Cordelia." His voice was soft, dangerous. "We both know that." She couldn't meet his eyes. "I don't know what you mean. Don't you?" He reached out, his fingertips barely grazing her cheek. "You watch me work. I feel your eyes on me. And at night, when you think I sleep, I hear you pacing your room like a caged wolf." Heat flooded her face. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" His thumb traced along her jawline. "When you tend my cuts and bruises, your hands linger longer than necessary. When we sit by the fire in the evenings, you lean closer to hear my stories. And yesterday, when the wind blew your dress tight against your body, I saw how you looked at me looking at you." Cordelia's breath came in short gasps. "This is madness. We are two people who have found something unexpected. In each other," he finished. "Something worth fighting for." The storm that night seemed to mirror the tempest raging in Cordelia's chest. Rain lashed the windows while thunder shook the house to its foundations. She paced her bedroom in her nightgown, every flash of lightning illuminating the barn where Ayanna sheltered Dot at midnight. Unable to bear the torment any longer, she threw on Morrison's old coat and ran through the downpour to the barn. She found Ayanna sitting on a hay bale, sharpening his knife by lantern light. His shirt was off, revealing the intricate scars that mapped his chest like a warrior's autobiography. "You should not be here," he said without looking up. "I couldn't sleep, nor could I." He set aside the blade, his eyes reflecting the golden lamplight. "The bounty hunters will come tomorrow. I've seen their sign." Cordelia's heart clenched. "Then we run. Head west, lose ourselves in the territories." "We?" He stood slowly, his massive frame casting long shadows across the barn walls. "You would abandon everything for me? There's nothing left here but ghosts. And debt." The admission tore from her throat. "Morrison is dead. Margaret is dead. The bank will take the ranch within 6 months anyway." Ayanna closed the distance between them with predatory grace. "And what life could I give you? A wanted man with nothing but the clothes on his back? I don't care about comfort or safety anymore." She reached for him, her palms pressing against his bare chest. "I care about feeling alive again." His control shattered. With a growl that was purely animal, he hauled her against him, his mouth crashing down on hers with desperate hunger. She tasted storm and wildness on his lips, tasted the promise of a life lived without apology or compromise. Her fingers tangled in his long hair as he lifted her effortlessly, carrying her to the soft hay in the corner. The coat fell away, leaving her in nothing but the thin nightgown that suddenly felt like armor she needed to shed. "Are you certain?" He whispered against her throat, his hands trembling despite their strength. "Once we cross this line, there can be no going back. For answer, she pulled a nightgown over her head, baring herself to his burning gaze. In the lamplight, her pale skin seemed to glow like moonstone. His breath caught at the sight of her fuller. Then fashion demanded, marked by childbirth and grief, but beautiful in ways that had nothing to do with youth or perfection. "You are magnificent," he breathed, his fingertips tracing the silver stretch marks on her belly with reverent care. "Like a river carved by time, more beautiful for every mark life has left upon you." When he lowered his head to worship her body with his mouth, Cordelia arched beneath him with a cry that was both surrender and victory. For the first time since Margaret's death, she felt truly alive. Their love-making was fierce and tender by turns a claiming that went soul deep. When he finally joined with her, stretching and filling her completely, she wept at the rightness of it. This was what she'd been searching for without knowing it, not just passion, but completion. "I love you," she gasped as he moved within her with exquisite care. "God help me, I love you." "And I love you, beautiful woman," he replied in a voice roughened by emotion. In English, in Comanche, in every language the heart knows. They moved together in the ancient rhythm, rain drumming on the roof above them while lightning painted their joined bodies in stark relief. When release claimed them, it was with the force of a prairie storm wild and cleansing and utterly transformative. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the sweet-scented hay, Cordelia traced the scars on his chest with wondering fingers. "Tell me about this one," she whispered. "Bear claw when I was 16. His arm tightened around her. "And this?" "Bullet from a cavalry officer who thought himself a better shot than he was." She pressed her lips to each mark, claiming them as part of the man she loved. Dawn brought the thunder of hoofbeats and the harsh shouts of men. Cordelia woke in Ayana's arms to find sunlight streaming through the barn slats, and her blood turned to ice when she recognized Sheriff Dalton's voice in the yard. "Cordelia Whitmore, come out here now." Ayana was already moving, pulling on his clothes with swift efficiency. "Stay here," he commanded. "Let me handle this, like hell." She struggled into her nightgown and Morrison's coat. "This is my ranch." They emerged from the barn together to find 8 mounted men in the yard, rifles trained on the barn door. Sheriff Dalton sat his horse with grim satisfaction, his star gleaming in the morning sun. "Well, well," he drawled. "Looks like the rumors were true. Mrs. Whitmore's been keeping herself a pet savage." Cordelia stepped protectively in front of Ayana, though he towered over her. "What do you want, Sheriff?" "That murdering redskin behind you. There's a federal warrant for his arrest and a nice bounty to go with it." Dalton's eyes glittered with greed. "Stand aside, Cordelia. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. He's under my protection." Several of the men laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Protection?" sneered Deputy Mills. "Lady, you've been rolling in the hay with that animal. Whole territory's talking about it." Ayana's growl was audible, his muscles coiling for violence. Cordelia reached back, her fingers finding his wrist in a gesture that was both restraint and comfort. "Careful, boys," warned Dalton. "That savage has killed more white folks than smallpox. He moves wrong, you shoot to kill." "I'm not going anywhere," Ayana said calmly, his accented English carrying clearly across the yard. "But the woman is innocent. Let her be." "Innocent?" Mills spat tobacco juice into the dust. "Whore's been spreading her legs for a killer. Makes her a traitor to her own kind." The words hit Cordelia like physical blows, but she held her ground. Around the edges of the yard, she noticed her ranch hands gathering Jasper and the others, their faces hard with decision. "Now here's how this is going to work," Dalton continued. "You step away from the savage, Mrs. Whitmore, and maybe we'll forget what we seen here. Otherwise, you'll be arrested as an accomplice to murder. Cordelia's mind raced. 8 guns against 2 people. No chance in a straight fight, but perhaps $500, isn't it? She called out. The bounty? That's right. Dead or alive. She nodded slowly, then reached into her coat pocket. Every man tensed, but she withdrew only a folded paper. Then I believe this belongs to me. She held up the deed to her ranch. What the hell are you talking about? Dalton demanded. Simple business transaction, Cordelia replied with amazing calm. I'm claiming the bounty on this man myself. As the property owner who apprehended him, the reward is legally mine. The sheriff's face darkened. That's not how it works. Isn't. It show me the law that says otherwise, she smiled coldly. I've got a prisoner on my property, Sheriff. Are you going to help me transport him to the federal marshal, or are you going to interfere with a citizen's arrest? The legal maneuvering confused some of the men, but Dalton wasn't buying it. Nice try, lady, but she's right. Jasper's voice cut through the morning air as he stepped forward, rifle in hand. Territorial law says the property owner has first claim on any bounty earned on their land. Behind him, Cordelia's other ranch hands spread out, their weapons visible but not yet threatening. The odds had just shifted dramatically. This is ridiculous, Dalton snarled. Stand down, all of you. Can't do that, Sheriff, said old Pete, the cook. Mrs. Whitmore pays our wages. We take our orders from her. The standoff stretched taut as a bowstring. 8 against 8, but Cordelia's men knew the terrain and had the advantage of defensive. Positions. Then Ayanna spoke, his voice carrying absolute authority. Enough. I will not have blood spilled for my sake, Ayanna announced, stepping around Cordelia despite her attempts to restrain him. I surrender myself to the sheriff. No, Cordelia grabbed his arm with both hands. I won't let them take. You. He looked down at her with infinite tenderness, his large hand cupping her face. My brave heart, you have given me more happiness in these few weeks than I knew possible. But I will not see you harmed for loving me. Sheriff Dalton spurred his horse forward, sensing victory. Hands behind your back, savage. You're coming with us. But before anyone could move, a new voice rang across the yard, cultured, authoritative, and utterly unexpected. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Sheriff. All heads turned to see a well-dressed man on horseback approaching from the main road. His clothes marked him as someone of importance, and the silver badge pinned to his vest caught the sunlight. Federal. Marshal Hawthorne, the newcomer announced, dismounting with casual authority. And you gentlemen are interfering with a federal investigation. Dalton's face went pale. Marshal? We weren't told, because this operation is classified. Hawthorne strode forward, his keen eyes taking in the scene. The man you know as Storm Walker has been working as an undercover agent for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. His mission was to infiltrate the hostile bands and report on their movements. Stunned silence greeted this pronouncement. Cordelia felt the world tilt beneath her feet. That's impossible, Mills protested. He's killed dozens of our people. Regrettable but necessary to maintain his cover, Hawthorne replied smoothly. The intelligence he's gathered has prevented 3 major uprisings, saved hundreds of lives. He fixed Dalton with a steely stare. Now I suggest you and your men return to town before you compromise years of delicate work. The sheriff looked like he'd been gut-punched, but federal authority trumped local law. This isn't over, he muttered, wheeling his horse around. His men followed, their disappointed mutters fading into the distance. After they'd gone, Marshal Hawthorne turned to Ayanna with a slight smile. Your cover's blown, Agent. Time to come in. Wait, Cordelia stepped forward, her mind reeling. Is any of this true? Hawthorne's smile widened. Not a word of it, ma'am. But Sheriff Dalton doesn't know that. He tipped his hat to Ayanna. Your friend here saved my life during a blizzard last winter. When I heard about the manhunt, I figured I owed him a favor." Relief flooded through Cordelia so powerfully she nearly collapsed. Ayanna caught her, his strong arms the only solid thing in a spinning world. "But the bounty, the federal warrant, will mysteriously disappear from the files," Hawthorne assured her. "As far as official records show, Stormwalker died in a cavalry raid 6 months ago. This man is ... he gestured vaguely. "Joseph Running Bear, recently returned from the Indian school back east. Perfectly legal resident of these territories." A year later, Cordelia stood in the same yard, watching her husband teach their infant son to ride his first pony. The child a perfect blend of his parents. Heritage laughed with delight as Ayanna guided the gentle Mare in slow circles. The ranch had prospered beyond her wildest dreams. Ayanna's knowledge of the land, combined with her business acumen, had turned them into one of the most successful operations in the territory. More importantly, their marriage had shown others that love could bridge any divide. Joseph Running Bear had become a respected member of the community, his past as Stormwalker known only to a few trusted souls. The scars of his warrior days had faded, replaced by the contentment of a man who had found his true home. "Mama," the son called out, his chubby hands clapping. "Look at me." Cordelia laughed, her heart so full she thought it might burst. She'd lost everything, once husband, child, hope itself. But sometimes, she'd learned, losing everything was just another way of making room for something better. As the sun set over their prosperous land, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Ayanna dismounted and swept both wife and child into his powerful embrace. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked softly, as he did sometimes. "Choosing this life with me?" Cordelia looked into the face of the man who had begged to stay and work for her, who had promised to give her another child, who had kept every vow with fierce devotion. "Never," she whispered against his lips. "Not for a single moment." Their kiss tasted of prairie wind and endless tomorrows, while their son giggled between them and the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky.